y'all. Good Sunday to you. Yes, I'm doing two videos in one day. Very abnormal for me post trail, but already had this one kind of prepped. So thought, why not just go ahead and produce it today and get it out there. Um, so here we go. This one's going to cover day 4 and day 5 on the trail, which was from Blue Mountain Shelter at mile marker 50.2 to Addis Gap Stealth Camp at 63.9. Yes. So that is just over 13 miles, 13.7 to be exact. Maybe one of my shortest days of all time, other than in the whites. And there's a good reason for that. And let's look here on the map why that is. So again, I started at Blue Mountain Shelter. And quick comments about that. I didn't film going up to Blue Mountain Shelter or anything at that shelter that night. It was pouring down rain. It was a pretty rough night, to be honest with you. Yeah, I was soaking wet. Ended up setting up my tent. Realized that a Z-Packs tent is awesome in the rain. So everything stayed really dry that night, but I had to pack up in the rain and then start heading up the rest of Blue Mountain that next morning. Now, going up to Blue Mountain, I found it particularly rocky, like the first really rocky section of the trail. And it was really wet. These rocks were moss covered and really slippery coming up in this section right here. Just something to keep in mind for all you guys taking notes. If it's a dry day, man, I don't think it's going to matter to you at all. But this was the really first rocky section. Blood Mountain was rocky coming down, but that's to be expected as a mountain. I did not expect these. The cool thing I remember about these, I don't have pictures of it or video, but I remember this day very well. It was just that moss-covered forest type thing that feels like you're in another world, like something from medieval times. So that was pretty enjoyable other than the rain coming up to Blue Mountain. And one other thing, Blue Mountain, there is a stream right here, close to the shelter anyway. You have to walk down the trail just a little bit. And it was a pretty good stream, or pretty good, yeah, I guess a stream is the best way to, a spring is probably what it really was. But I scooped up some water in my 2-liter bag, my camp bag that I had with me, and I got back up to camp and realized I had 2 tiny little salamanders in my bag. And I talked to some other people who had that same experience here. So just be careful when you're scooping water or dipping your bag down in the water, and just look and make sure you don't have any little creatures that were taken out of their little natural habitat. Definitely not what we want if we don't. I actually walked them back down there and released them back down there because I felt guilty. Anyway, pretty cool experience. Yep. So that next morning I got up really early. Oh, that privy at the time too, I remember, did not have a top on it. So yeah, sitting doing my morning constitutional business, just getting soaked because there was no roof on the privy. So anyway, that was the first privy I'd used on the trail, and I wasn't too fond of them after that, but I got used to them. All right, so headed all the way up Blue Mountain, which wasn't too bad after that. You can see that we're over 4 grand here again. And we're going to be over 4 grand several times on this day, which is probably the reason why I only went 13.7. This was a steep down climb off of Trey. I remember that. I'm sorry, off Blue Mountain, getting you set up to go up Rocky Mountain. You can see this climb here. So that is, let's look at the mileage. 52.6 is where this climb starts at Unicoi Gap, and then the climb up out of Unicoi Gap. So you're at the top of Rocky Mountain at 54. So basically 1.4 miles, you're going up 1,000 feet. And folks, that's pretty freaking steep. I remember Unicoi well, it had just rained the day before, so all the streams were recharged coming up. So there's plenty of water, as you can see here, plenty of water going up the side of Unicoi. Good switchback. So even though it's steep, that's the good thing about the south. A lot of switchbacks to get you up those hills, and I really like that. And then up on top was really beautiful. There was no leaves on the tree at the time, so I had a lot of good views. And there was some tinning up there as well, so you can get some water. If this is the end of your day and you want to make one last climb, you can get some water definitely right here, and then camp up on top, and that'd be fabulous. I wish it had worked out to where I got to do that. Yep, so you're just up on top. This is very ubiquitous across the south. As soon as you get to the top of a mountain, you're heading right back down to the next gap. So heading back down into Indian Grave Gap, you can see this piece right here is extremely steep coming down. Knees are starting to ache a little bit this day. Got down in an Indian Grave Gap. I remember this because I had met I would say probably about a 15 or 16-year-old guy coming out of here, and talked to him, and then met his dad as I started climbing up Trey Mountain. I think they had camped out somewhere around Indian Grave Gap, if not up on top of Trey Mountain. I can't remember. So climbing up Trey Mountain, first thing you can get to is Trey Gap. I remember this, there was a whole lot of people camping out here. It was Saturday morning, so they had driven in on Friday night, and some really good camp spots right here, right by that Forest Service Road 79. And then continued up to the top of Trey Mountain, and then I filmed from Trey Mountain Shelter. I actually ate lunch here. It was about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. Not a big fan of this shelter or the privy or anything up on top, and the water source is very shadier. It was at the time. You can see we're up at 4193. But I will tell you the views up there are really amazing, and it started clearing up to where I could see a little bit by the time I started walking back down. So I won't kid you, by this time already in the day, I'd already been up above 4,000 3 times. Started heading back down to Wolf Pen Gap, and now the decisions for me are how far do I go? I think I was wanting to go to Deep Gap Shelter. So ultimately, I was setting myself up to get into Dix Creek Gap and go to the Top of Georgia Hostel. So my idea this day was to get to Deep Gap Shelter, but that would have had to make me go over Kelly Knob. Now I thought I was going to do it, but by the time I got to Addis, old boy was tired, and that was such a nice little camp spot. But the problem is, it says, yeah, if you can see, it's got stealth camping and water, but that water's 0.5 down a road, way down a hill. So that ended up being a brutal walk down on sore feet, but it worked out well. Had a great night's sleep here. So that's where we're going to stop for the day and see the terrain. It was, I'm telling you, North Georgia is tough. It's tough because you're just getting used to things. You're still getting adapted to the trail. And the weather the night before made it pretty tough too. Ultimately, though, still having a great time during this time. You can see we've been up above 4, and I was camping at 3,300 feet. And then the next morning, it is just a straight butt whipping up to 4126. But we'll cover that in the next video. All right, y'all, I'm going to switch over. All right, y'all, here we go. Days 4 and 5. Start off in my tent. I'm at Blood Mountain Shelter at this point in time when the video starts.
Morning, everybody. Early riser, 7-1. It's the morning of day 4. Didn't update you guys last night. I'm at Blue Mountain Shelter. I had a couple who had been right behind me all down the trail. They were just section hiking, a small little section overnight, from Hogpen to Unicoi. So they're here at the shelter. I'm out in my tent actually, and then one other guy showed up. Raining is a mess last night, foggy. Anyway, so I was dealing with that, talking to them for a while. A lot of people don't like to be filmed. I tried yesterday to get about 2 or 3 through hikers, see if they'd let me interact with them like John did on Blood Mountain, and none of them were into it. So I'm an introvert too, so I ain't gonna ask any more times. I'm trying. I can't remember who asked for that after my first video was posted, but I'm trying. I'll do it again today if I see some. It's supposed to be sunny today, actually the next few days. Plan is I'm going to leave Blue Mountain Shelter, go through Unicoi Gap, go past Trey Mountain Shelter, and then camp somewhere just shy of Dix Creek Gap. I think it's a shelter maybe just 2 miles short, something like that. I'm going to go ahead and spend the night there and then get up.
All right, so basically just going over the plan that I briefed y'all when we were looking at AWOL's guide. But yeah, so filming on the trail, there are definitely some people who don't want to be on film for whatever reason. So, and I just happened to hit 2 or 3 of them that day. So it already started getting me deflated a little bit that I was going to be some kind of 7, if you will, that interviews a bunch of people. If y'all ever saw his videos, not that I'm trying to aspire to be 7, but I enjoyed his videos. Here's my first example of, let me tell y'all what's happening here. I think I told y'all before, but so with a camera, when you're filming with your phone, it has a gyro in it, right? So with my phone anyway, I noticed, and I've seen this on other people's videos, I'm trying to do everything one-handed, hold poles or whatever in the other hand. Here, holding a headlamp and the phone in the same hand or whatever. So if you push record before that gyro has gone into the position that you want to film in, sometimes it will stick in the position it was at before you get the camera rotated, or it will stick in the position it's at, I should say, once you hit the record button. So if you hit the record button and then try to turn it and think the gyro is going to update on the recording, it will not sometimes. Not a big deal. You're just going to have to rotate your video in whatever editor program or app that you're using. So anyway, that's what was going on there. Here I was drinking what I call grass juice, trying to keep my greens in. It was pretty gross. I still drink these every day, to be honest with you, when I'm back here, but a lot better when you're mixing it with fruit juice and not just water. Some sound back up.
And every now and then a car going through the gap. Blue Mountain Shelter, not bad overall. If you need a place to stay, we were up in the clouds all night. I would have just ascended about another 100 feet. It'd have been a lot drier all night, but anyway. Privy sucks. It doesn't even have a top on it, but entertaining all nonetheless.
So that's another, y'all have heard me if you watch my pre-hike videos. That night I was in the clouds, right? So the clouds, it was pouring rain and we were above the cloud deck or inside the cloud deck, which just makes for a wet, miserable night. No matter how dry your tent is, the wind's blowing sideways, the clouds are just pouring over the mountaintop where we were at, and it just gets everything wet. So if you have the opportunity, descend, like camel up on some water and then descend back down and try to find a campsite below the cloud deck, and you'll be much, much drier and probably much happier the next day. Just a tip. Don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Shelter on the way to the top of Blue Mountain. Additionally, poles. So, lessons learned that I learned a long time ago. People talk about the hand strap or the wrist straps. Do you wear them? A lot of people, especially the ounce counters, say, "No, man, take them off. Save a couple of ounces." And I can't argue that. You can. However, if you use your poles right going uphill, I put my hands to the straps more times than not. You get more leverage that way if you do it right. I'm sure there's some videos.
This is a point of contention on the trail. It's not a point of contention, but people are passionate, poles or no poles. And I will say 90% of the people, if not more, that I passed used poles, especially long distance hikers. I'm still befuddled by people who do not carry poles and use them. You want to talk about saving your knees and saving your legs and distributing the power and the energy expenditure that you use when you're going uphill and downhill. Hiking poles are, it's almost like letting an athlete take steroids. It's just a way to be a little bit stronger, to use more leverage on the trail. So don't pass it up and try poles. If you go out and try poles and you get done hiking a day or two or a long section, you say, "Hey, I don't understand why people use poles." You did not use the poles correctly, because these things going uphill, you should be putting a lot of weight on the poles, taking a lot of the weight off your legs, spreading that load across different parts of your body. And when you're using those poles, now you're getting to use back muscle, you're getting to use chest muscle, you're getting to use triceps. A whole lot of things that those poles allow you to do to take the pressure off of the muscles that you use all day long, and that's those legs. So you want to talk about feeling better at the end of the night and the next morning and not having to recover as much those legs. Use hiking poles, and they will save your knees. When you get to the whites and you start those gigantic descents, man, those poles can take a lot of the weight off those joints as you're having to climb down off a rock.
Whatever the climb out of Unicoi Gap is, I don't know what the name of this is. I didn't look before I started filming. Anyway, that's a brutal climb. For those of you who are getting down into Unicoi, don't have a lot of energy, feeling weak, you might want to go into town, recharge a little bit, because that monster right there is a good one. And retired ranger, I was just thinking about you.
So this was the top of
At
Rocky
45 pounds.
Mountain. So this is the
Man,
top
man,
of
let me get you.
Unicoi
To be
Gap.
honest with you, I
And
think
again, that's at
once
1,000
again,
feet in just
chemicals
under a mile and a
really
half,
bad
and
getting past
it
up
is a
there. So
brutal
we had to get
climb.
the rental car back. So I didn't weigh my ruck, but I know it was 35, just probably south of 40 before I added those 2 apples. Then it was up to like 70. Those 2 apples are gone now, so I'm good. Anyway, man, the ruck, the weight hadn't been an issue at all. Moving fast. As soon as the weather permits, man, definitely I'm gonna drop down, send some of this crap home. I know we're gonna get hit with some snow somewhere. This warm weather is just setting us up. All right, y'all. Unbelievable, what a vista. Hey, so that peak right there in the center of the screen, that's Mount Yonah. That's very cool knowing the area.
All right, so that
Get
the
crazy on it.
conversation of how much your ruck
But
weighs,
knowing
again,
what it is, because
one
yesterday
of those
went well so
discussions
far.
that
Today we're even
people
passing it.
fight uncontrollably to get their weight down as much as possible,
But I've
especially their
known
base
sitting
weight,
next to that mountain
before
too
you
is
add food and water.
Yonah burgers.
And hey, I'm a
Long drive
proponent
there
of
to
it.
that
Get
place.
it as light as you can,
Man, I love Yonah burger and steaks.
especially if
Right
you're
now I'm
not going to
surprised
get your body
somebody
in
plugged fuel
shape
in that
before you come out.
carburetor right
Then
there.
definitely
I
get
like
it
that
as light
little
as you can.
climb the
Even though y'all know my take on
hill by
that,
the
but
Indian Grave Gap.
I was
Headed
pretty
towards
heavy
Straight
when I
Mountain.
left. I'm sure I
Got a
was at
couple
40
4,000 foot
pounds
peaks today.
when I left
Don't know how I feel
Springer.
about that, but whatever.
Um, and I like to use the excuse that, hey, I got a lot of cold weather gear, and I did. But I'll tell you, man, I carried too much food as well. And I got into the top of Georgia Hostel. I still had a lot of
Now, I
food
know most
left.
of y'all don't know
I
who that is, but he knows who he is.
downloaded a whole lot more food. We'll
Kurt
cover that when
Sherwood,
we get there. But
3 days ago.
y'all saw throughout my
Anyway,
journey, that was my
had to get
biggest
one in there, Curtis.
thing that I fought with myself is how
All
much
right,
food to
2
carry. When
hikes
you get into the
today.
next resupply
That's all
point,
I'm
you should
thinking,
have
because I'll forget
like
later
just a
on.
couple of little things left. And I'd have full days
1,
food left, like 1 to 2 days full
I've
food
never seen
left in my
anybody carrying
pack.
on
So
this,
that was some
but I'll
lessons
tell
I
you,
had to learn as the trail went on.
start working up a lather coming up these mountains. And I use that disgusting word just for somebody else and they know who they are. So you work up a lather and you know you're going to be staying out in the woods for days on end.
So the term lather is a
Getting some
term that one of
airflow
our
down around
strength
the
coaches at work
Taurus region.
uses.
Yes,
So
that's the
I was
medical
having
term,
to get that out
constrictors.
there early, and I hate that
It's
word.
a
He
good
used to say,
thing.
yeah, the guys up there working up a
So when the
lather, and
lather
it
starts
just does
building,
not, kind of
I
makes me
start
foam at
sweating,
my mouth a little bit. So I
start
was
getting my ass
giving
kicked.
him a little shout
I
out.
go shields down.
Here we go, folks. This
And
is
you get
where Shields
airflow.
Down was invented,
Now my wife is probably saying, oh my God.
and this
It's not
became very
inappropriate, folks.
obvious when I'm climbing
It's a
up
good way to stay cool.
Out of Unicoi
It's a good
Gap up
way to get
Rocky Mountain.
airflow
And I'm like, man,
before
I'm not
getting
going
to
to
the
get to shower
shields.
tonight. I hadn't showered in the
While you're
last
hiking
three
up these
days.
hills.
I'm going to be a sweaty
So you can at
mess.
least stand yourself tonight,
How can
which is
I
still
get
hard
better airflow
when you're
to
enclosed in
parts
your
of my
tent.
body? And it was just natural. Like
Smothering
I just
yourself.
went to the bathroom. I was
Second
like,
hack,
well, heck, man, if I leave this zipper open,
for all of you
obviously
listening to
airflow
Squeeze,
is going to get down to the nether regions.
and you're
And
using a smart water
I'm
bottle,
telling you,
the kind with
it
the super
makes a
smart refill,
world of difference to the point where I
charge it.
thought long and hard, and I was going to
Got
create
an extra one. I
a
think
whole
I've
new
seen y'all
zipper
smoke
line to
together.
sell to these pants companies.
Dumbass over the riser didn't do it.
Basically,
What
shields
broke
down,
yours
like
so far?
insect shield technology is going to be
Mine was a
shields down
Springer.
technology, and it's still in the
I
back
went
of my
and drove
mind.
up there,
Don't think it isn't.
and we opened the back of the
Just trying to
house.
get
We got
caught
the
up with
QD,
life right now, and we'll
and the only
see.
thing that
But
fell out was that smart water
I
bottle that
think
I had
there
back
is
in the cab
definitely
with me. And of course, it landed on
I
my
don't
head.
know,
It
you'd
broke,
have to do some research and
but it
see how
was
many
fixable, and
degrees
it lasted till I got the
body
wheels.
temperature it could reduce, but even 0.5
That was
degrees, if
when I
you
had
can
it on a
reduce
small
your
water
body
bottle.
temperature
So like, I
going
unfolded
up
way
a
water,
mountain like
maybe
that
this
by
heavy will stay a
0.5,
little better.
you are
So I'm rucking up this
like,
morning.
that is winning.
The only thing that
So
wasn't smart
anyway, I'm
was
not
the
saying
water bottle
it does
and the
that
bottle.
dramatic of a job.
The big one
It might be more
landed on a
mental,
rock
but
and hit
whatever
the
it
side of
is,
the
it
bottle.
worked for me, and I
Landed
did
right
it
on
the
the cap
entire
and broke
trail.
it again.
The
So now
only
I got
time, the
slowly
only thing that is bad about it is
shimmy sham
the
tape
fact
on
that,
it,
let me pause this real quick.
but it ain't working worth the crap.
The only bad thing about it is when you meet people later on and you forget to zip back up. And I can't tell you, this happened to me 100 or more times, I promise you, where first thing they look down is my zipper that's wide open, shields down. And do you take time to explain the whole shield down thing, or do you just zip them up? I don't know. Most time I just act like it wasn't zipped down and go on without having to have a conversation about it. But anyway,
But it'll make it to
so
top
what
of
I'm
the trail house
explaining
anyway.
here,
But if I had an extra one, wouldn't be getting my side wet right now. Gotta have it for a water carrier though. All right, out.
so the whole lesson learned there was
I'm at a father
I
and
had
son.
dropped
Well, not
my
I'm at an
smart
Indian.
water bottle
Actually, I'm at the son
2
of that Indian
times
grave
already
gap.
up to this
My
point
father,
and
because
broke
I
the
was climbing
smart
up.
I'm sorry, the sports cap on top. And once the cap that folds over, that flips over and keeps it sealed, breaks, man, that thing just sloshes out. And I had that happen twice. So lesson learned for me here was I carry an extra flat cap that goes on your smart water bottle, and I carry an extra sports cap. And man, they weigh nothing. I keep those in my water filtration bag, and that way, if this happens again, I don't have to sit there and walk because I gotta have the water carrier, especially for this part of the trail. I try to put tape over it, and that worked a little bit. But in the end, you gotta have those extra caps so you can keep your water inside if you break something. So just a little lesson learned here that I learned the hard way. I got some when I got to the top of Georgia hostel and carried extra ones the whole way. Here's Indian Grave Gap, or just up from Indian Grave Gap, I can say.
This on the top of Indian Gap.
So down in Indian Grave Gap,
Indian Grave Gap.
So this is
you'll cross over a dirt road and then
for guys
come on up a little bit more, and this is a beautiful campsite. Anyway, I just I told them I was vlogging, so if they watch the video, Early Riser says, "Hey man, it's good to meet you guys." Always motivates me seeing something like that, like a father and son. Anyway, all right, out from Trey Gap.
So that was still on the way up to top of Trey Mountain. It's Trey Gap. Heading up. There's the beast right up there.
Mountain, 4,400 feet on the map, and the sun toe is fairly accurate, plus or minus 20 feet. That's 40.
All right, y'all. So the sun toe watch, and I paused that in kind of a crappy place. Let me go back 10 seconds.
Mountain, 4,400 feet on the map, and the sun toe is fairly accurate.
All right, so sun toe watch. This one, oh man, I'll have to go back. It's like not the Highlander, but I don't even think they sell this version anymore. But several things you can see on here. A's the elevation. This is what I used it for, right? So you have the elevation option. It has a barometer on it. Depending on how these arrows are, both of them are down here, meaning I think the pressure was dropping. So meaning that more than likely, if one arrow's down, you'll have to read the book, but it means rain's probably coming, the pressure's dropping. Both of them means the pressure's really low. And then if they start raising back up, that means a high pressure system starting to move over the area. I think I could be 180 off on that at this point. But ultimately, I use the altimeter more than anything. And the problem with this is, as the pressure changes outside, just like in an airplane, they have to set their altimeter every day, sometimes multiple times a day. So when they're landing in an airport that wasn't the one they took off from, their altimeter will read correct, and meaning they will know what altitude they're at. Same thing with the watch. You got to set it a lot. I quit setting it, whether I was just lazy or forget to, and it would be 200 to 300 feet off. What does that mean to you? That means there's a lot of false summits that just piss you off because your watch is reading the wrong altimeter. A lot of times this thing would be high. So if I know the mountain's going to be 4,400 feet, or I'm sorry, let's say 4,100 feet, and I look down at my watch and I'm at 4,400 feet, man, emotions kick up immediately, and I start getting angry. And it's the watch's fault. It ain't the mountain's fault, but that will mess with your mind. So
plus or
keep that in
minus
mind.
20
If you
feet.
want to take out a watch that has an
44
altimeter,
turns a second ago.
You have to recalculate or recalibrate it a lot to make sure it's going to read correctly every day. If not, it can serve as more.
It's currently about 10:47.
This
Still
is
day 4
right here.
I don't know how many miles this has been. I'll update that on the next go. That's the privy down there. You guys have seen this a ton of times. I only stopped here because it's close to the trail. Not really a shelter dude, but I'm gonna fix my feet real quick. I'm gonna eat some lunch. I'm gonna roll my legs out. You guys coming behind me this year, you're strategizing, obviously.
It's just a dirty shelter, man. It was that day. You can see the trash. Leave no trace obviously doesn't apply to people sometimes. They just left crap everywhere. What I do like these benches right here. I said that in the video. This is pretty cool. Those are the little things about shelters that are unique, that somebody built this, and I really like those benches. It's a great place to eat. I remember sitting down and using the thread method on the Blister for the first time at this shelter. You can see you got amazing views up here, especially in the winter when the leaves are off the trees. But anyway, Yeah, I used the thread method. So I had some blisters on my feet. So that's where you run a piece of thread with a needle through that blister where it's hanging out both ends, and you just leave it that way. And that way the blister can't fill back up with fluid the rest of the day. And I fell in love with that technique. What I can't believe is I went 20 something years in the military and did not ever use that technique or know about it. So kudos to the person who gave me that idea. The Big Sur bar. I freaking love these things. Got 2 or 3 of these at Addis Gap. You can see they're 600 calories per bar, and you feel superhuman after you eat one of these things and start hiking. I have since looked those up online. They're very expensive. I haven't pulled the trigger because I really don't need 600 calories in my life anymore in one little bar. But I will tell you, when you get to Nils Gap, if you can get some of the Big Surs, or if you can buy some of those, they're worth their weight, man. Those things were awesome. All right, let's tune in a little bit.
Monday. Let's come up on top of this ridge line. It's just gorgeous. Beautiful day. Clouds are still on top of, wow, we're sitting right on top of Trey Mountain. We're in heaven down here. You know, y'all may have noticed by now, even on day 4, that I don't film a lot after lunch.
So here's where I start revealing and start realizing that afternoons aren't going to be my thing when it comes to filming. But man, the bigger thing I want to point out here is some people argue, hey man, you don't want to start hiking until there's leaves on the trees because it's gorgeous. And I will argue the opposite for us winter hikers. Look at this. This is a view that you would not have, would be totally obscure if it was spring or summertime. So don't be scared to start a little early. Yep, there's a chance it could be cold as heck. But the heat that I'm seeing people walk in right now, man, I don't want any part of it. And that's just personal preference. But swag of the Blue Ridge. You see this in everybody's video. Yeah, but anyway, personal preference. The views I had the entire way up the trail were really amazing because I was able to ride that wave just in front of spring.
I think it's 4,200 feet. I'm at 3,600 and descending. My 2 options today are stop at Addis Campground, which is shy of that mountain, or do an excursion over the mountain and go down to Deep Gap Shelter. Both of them will set me up for a morning arrival into top of Georgia hostel. 4:15 in the afternoon, or I'm sorry, 2:15, 14:15 for you military folks.
So here's where you start strategizing on the trail. This is a good example of, the day's progressing. My body is not really accomplishing what my mind was hoping that it could. Now you got to make some decisions. Really, the goal here was to get in top of Georgia Hostel early enough the next day to Nero. This would be the first Nero. For whatever weird egotistical reasons, I didn't want to take a full 0 at this point. Here's Addis Gap, great camp spot, by the way. So just remember that this water source is over a half a mile away, so I did an extra mile just going to it. Yeah, so the body wasn't going to do what the mind wanted, so I stopped short, but I still was going to be able to get into the top of Georgia Hostel the next morning by around 9 o'clock, and I did, and I had all day to recover, refit, and go into town and eat. I got to eat lunch, got to eat dinner in town. It was awesome. Just a really good day.
Even quilt. Didn't really get wet, just got damp because the clouds were blowing through all freaking night. Let's talk about underwear. And that's powder in my underwear. Don't think I'm just some kind of weird freak. I gotta tell you, I like the Under Armour performance underwear better than the X-Fishio. Maybe it's just a sizing issue, but they don't ride up my legs. I find with the X-Fishio, I have to unzip my zipper unless I'm already shields down, and then reach in there and pull the leggings down after I climb a hill.
Yeah, this is a really big pain in my butt at first, and I will tell you, I was really early in the hike, obviously, here. I still wear those X-Officios, those Under Armour. I can't tell you where those are because the X-Officio ended up being the better pair of underwear. If you have them tight, there's my knees. I pulled my
We'll drive on. We're gonna get food.
compression sleeves up over my knees because they were hurting so bad this night.
Top of Georgia hostel. And
Back to the underwear.
he's taking Nero and
Ex
some other
Officio
stores.
is my brand. Like,
Body
they were
shop
really
on Monday.
good. They lasted the whole trail, and I still wear them. In fact, I got them on right now, actually.
All right.
They do. So if you get them tight in the beginning, they will, when you're going up these steep hills and inclines, they're going to pull up your legs. The underwear legs will, and they just get bunched up by your hip, and it's aggravating as crap. After I lost a little bit of weight, I found out that just having a little bit of baggy in those legs made it much better. They would just fall right back down. If they were really tight and they went up, obviously they weren't going to fall back down unless you pulled them down. So just a lesson learned from me on the underwear. I probably would have sized up right away and then just be ready to send you another tighter pair once you start losing weight, because you will lose weight, most people.
This is just early riser, but I suggest bringing camp shoes, and I would bring Crocs. That's just me. Would flip-flops have worked down there? Yeah, maybe, but I was climbing up a hill and down a hill, so flip-flops probably wouldn't have been the best thing. Just a tip. It is the morning of day 5. It's Monday, February the 20th.
All right, let's have the camp shoes discussion real quick. That was the first time where I realized that camp shoes you just can't live without them out on the trail. Some people do. God bless you. I can't. I can, but I wouldn't do it, honestly. That mile walk down to the water and back I had from Addis Gap, my feet were sore. I needed to get the shoes off. I needed to get some air in my feet, and the Crocs allowed me to do that. And also put that strap behind my heel to where they won't fall off. Flip-flops, yeah, they could have been. You're walking down a dirty gravel road, so it's just gonna, it's a beautiful sunrise.
Probably about 4.5, 5 miles to Dix Creek Gap. Beautiful day. Unbelievable. I'm in a short sleeve shirt and could be in shorts right now, February 20th. Happy President's Day to everybody. I know all you federal workers are enjoying a day off.
So everybody's going to have to figure out what kind of camp shoes you want to take. Y'all know me, as I got to Maine, like I saw everybody's video, I was like, yeah, you're going to want to change into some water shoes in Maine when you do the fours. Heck with all that, man. I just left my freaking shoes on, and because I was liking my feet wet at the time. Still a very unusual thing to most people to keep your feet wet, but to me it just works. Camp shoes, I would take Crocs again. After 113 days of carrying them, and yes, they're about a pound weight penalty, I would carry Crocs the whole way again because they were that beneficial. Shoes walking around town, I always use my Crocs. I still wear the same Crocs. They're almost like brand new. You just can't beat that shoe for a camp shoe. So keep that in mind. That's just early riser's tip. You got to figure out what works for you.
Last night, good to go. Feel like a new man.
And the last thing we'll cover today is sleep. What I was talking about right there is I just wasn't sleeping good. I don't think I'd probably even hit a 90-minute full REM cycle up to this point. That was my third night on the trail. So here's early riser's tip. The more that you can get out and condition yourself to the conditions before you get out on the trail, you're still going to be excited. It's still going to be hard to sleep like the night before going on some cool vacation or something. The more you can get out in your tent in the yard or whatever and just get used to everything that you're doing prior to stepping on the trail, the better you're going to sleep. I slept pretty good those first few nights, and I will say that's because I had at least 10 or more nights in my tent out in the backyard in the cold, already tested my equipment. Sleep is critical. It's as important, if not more important, than food and water. If you're not sleeping good out there, those climbs are going to feel worse. You're not going to be having a good time. There's probably a larger chance that you're going to come off the trail early. These are a bunch of studies I wish somebody would get some research money and go out and do. I don't know to what end, but performance, we all know if you're not sleeping good, you're not going to perform well. And if you're not performing well out there, you're not going to have fun. If you're not going to have fun, if you're not having fun, you're asking yourself, why am I out here? And once those questions start, it's like a vicious cycle until you leave the trail, or you are a mental giant and can overcome it.
We all want to put in those miles. Nobody does as much as me, but sometimes you got to hold short. That's old Seinfeld comedy, right? The hold short. Anyway, I digress. Hey, by the way, this might be the most beautiful morning that I've ever seen. Anyway, another song for you. First one to name the artist. Put it in the
All
comments.
right, so did a little Lil Wayne this morning. Didn't sing much more after this. I'm glad because it's hard to stomach right now as I listen to it. Uh, but anyway, it got good reviews. I don't know why because I sing terrible. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this week. So what happened the rest of this day right here? I walked down at the top of Georgia Hostel, which we'll see right down here in a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward.
Heading up to the Hiker Hostel. I'm sorry, the top of Georgia Hostel. I'll do some refit, recover, and get back on the trail tomorrow. All right, later. Approaching top of Georgia Hostel.
So the top of Georgia Hostel is just about a .5 road walk. I remember when you get to the road there at Dix Creek Gap, you're just going to take a left and there's white blazes down the road to kind of just let you know you're going the right way. These little affirmations that yes. And it seemed like more than .5 to me, but it's down there and it's well worth it. I don't care what anybody says, man. Go to the top of Georgia Hostel. They will take care of you. Very experienced at taking care of through hikers. All right, I'm going to switch over.
All right, y'all, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. This will obviously be the last video, probably this week. I might try to do one in the middle of the week sometime. Ultimately, we'll be picking up from top of Georgia Hostel and moving Nobo when the next video picks up. Top of Georgia Hostel, you should go to their website, do some research, but I got in there at like 9 o'clock. They were cleaning the bunk room, which they do every day. It was very clean. The showers and bathrooms were immaculate. It was a really good time. They didn't have private rooms there. You're going to be in a bunk house with other people, but it was fine. Got to do laundry right away. They do the laundry for you. You give them $5. You put it in a basket, and you can take a shower. Like I got to shower inside the main building because they were cleaning the shower at the other place. They're really nice. They did the wash for you. They'll bring it back to you when it's done. You go into town 3 times a day, I think, or maybe just 2 times. But I went in for lunch, had a buffet style thing at some country restaurant, which I'm a Southern boy, so I loved it. And then we went back out for dinner. Don't remember what I had, but I do remember going to Ingles. So there's an Ingles. I don't know, depending on where you're coming from across the country. Definitely down south, and I'm sure it's that way. I remember like Vaughn's over in California, VONS. When I went there, they all have the little specific card for their store. Ingles is the same way. Ingles is ubiquitous in the South on the trail. So go ahead and get you one of those cards. You can probably get one every time you go into Ingles, so you don't have to carry it, because I know some of the ounce weenies will be like, man, I'm not carrying that card. Like that weighs too much. But I carried it, and it saves you a ton of money in those grocery stores. So keep that in mind. Yeah, the resupply was there. They have everything in that town. I remember going to Rite Aid to buy some stuff for my feet. They had everything that you needed, as well as they have some supplies at top of Georgia Hostel, like fuel and some other necessities too. So you'll be taken care of when you get to Dix Creek Gap and get ready to start pushing towards that North Carolina border. All right, y'all. Hope y'all had a good week. Again, love all of you, man. Send your comments below, and and questions, and I will try to answer them the next video. Deuces.